format will be today is we're going to give you a brief overview of how we got to where we are now, and then look for some questions from the audience. She asked me if I wanted that device in order to advance it, and I told her she could do it.
Well, and I just did it right before you guys got here.
It always works when nobody's here.
Okay, a little bit about the history of merger. I know that many of you have been here for a long time, and merger has been a word forever, it seems. That what happened was that Stage II covenants in 1995 mandated a merger with the Bulkhead Island Association. And to reflect that, when the Bulkhead Association covenants were redone in 1999, that reflected, it was mandated with the association in our covenants also to go ahead and deal with that merger. In around 2009, Bulkhead Island's Long Range Planning Committee, the association's Long Range Planning Committee, met for a couple of years, and at that time there were a number of reasons why merger wasn't feasible. One of them being we needed to wait for Stage II to be turned over by the developer to the property owners. At that time that it was turned, Stage II was turned over to the property owners, we worked very hard to begin the process of trying to get together and having some in order to get the design guidelines to be as close as possible to have one set of design guidelines. And some of that has happened. Most recently, and there's some other things that happened in between, one of them was that when the merger was put into the Bulkhead Island Association covenants, there was a date attached of 2012, and that just wasn't feasible, so that was taken out of there. This year, one of the mandates that the board gave to the Long Range Planning Committee was to begin the process and see if we couldn't make merger happen to put in that. And so that since the actually January, February of this year, a lot of work and preparation is going on to merger, and which brings us up to today, and where we hope to inform our property owners, and that we will be having a vote by the property owners on merger at the annual meetings of both associations. And it has to be something that the merger committee was formed, the Bulkhead Association Merger Committee. I have not been active on it for the entire process. A lot of work that went into the trenches were done by Joe Hawkins and Roselle and Carmen Muggy, and they have put in countless hours. Carrie Moffat has put in extremely a lot of extra work in her job this year, and we've had a lot of consultation with our attorney, Andrew McVeigh. The Stage II Association, President Alan Briggs has been very active. Tricia Barnard has continued to be active working towards merger. Robert Dunbiller is on the merger committee, and Ricky Grantmeyer, and their attorney has also been very much involved. One of the things that I asked Carrie to think about before this meeting is I said, let's try and see all of these meetings starting in January, and all of the staff time and all of the lawyer time, how much has gone into this merger. And it turns out that a minimum of over 2,000 hours has gone in, 2,000 man hours has gone into the merger as to where we are at this time. And that doesn't count a lot of the hours spent by Stage 2 when they weren't meeting us. So this has not been an easy process, and it has been a very, very time-consuming process. So the key points of merger, Stage 2 will fold into the Bald Head Island Association. We will remain the association that we are today, but with more property members. All the current Stage 2 members will become Bald Head Island members. They'll have the same rights and obligations as the current Bald Head Island Association members. We have been, one of the things that has been part of this ongoing over 2,000 hours of work has been working to come up with what we're calling the United Covenant, which will be adopted simultaneously with the merger. There have been copies of these now on the web. They are not complete. We're still debugging them, so to speak, as things keep cropping up, as you know, as you get into the end of things. So the United Covenants are still have minor tweaks, as does the plan of merger that we will be signing. That really is an overview of what the associations will look like when this is all taking place. There will be United Design Guidelines. With all of the work that's gone into the other two documents, it simply isn't possible to also rewrite the design guidelines at this time. So this will be something that happens during, if merger is approved, then the design guidelines will be over the 2017 year, and we have a timeline for that. There are, one of the reasons that this has become such a time-consuming process is that Stage 2 doesn't just have one set of covenants like we do. They have a general set of covenants, and then they have something like 37 individual covenants that relate to specific properties within Stage 2. So to make all this fit has been an interesting process. So we have also, in Stage 2, they have a lot of different communities that are managed as communities, so that both of all of these communities that are coming into, if they come into the Bald Head Association, will be managed by us, or we may continue to use the CAM, Community Association Management, to manage some of those larger sections out in Stage 2. There are many neighborhoods, as I just said, that have secondary covenants that will need to be overseen within this. Surfman's Walk and some of those neighborhoods. What the plan is now, that the model that we're going to use is a paid-for-service model, so that those neighborhoods where it's in their covenants that maintenance needs to take place, there will be a supplemental charge to them in order to cover those expenses, so that there will be additional supplemental dues for that type of management for those neighborhoods. Just as now the villas pay dues to their association in order to manage that. The Stage 2, those organizations in Stage 2 are managed by the central organization. So expenses, also expenses related to any additional properties, will be covered by the dues. In addition, reserves that need to be collected and that type of thing. So the approval of voting on the approval of the plan of merger and the United Covenant. And as I said before, we need to have a vote of approval by both Stage 1 and Stage 2 in order for that to happen. We're going to have questions after, okay? So some of this may come up. Gary? Go ahead. Did I miss something? Okay.
I do want to make one thing very clear, that when we're talking about these neighborhoods in Stage 2, just as a way of explanation, in Walnut Association, we have a lot of neighborhoods. I live in Tilbury Ridge, Tilbury Ridge Homeowners Association, Timber Creek Village, et cetera, which self-manage here in Walnut Association, Stage 1. In Stage 2, they never incorporated these neighborhoods as homeowners associations. They can, they have the ability to do that, but they have not done so, and they cannot be forced to do that according to their covenant. So the way that that maintenance has been done on those neighborhoods is, let's say you have a $10,000 landscaping contract for Surfers Walk, for example, whatever those numbers are. What they have been charging the Surfers Walk property owners is the $10,000 that they pay to the landscaping company. What they have not been charging back there is the management fees, the negotiating contract, the billing, the telephone calls, et cetera, et cetera. And some of our concern was that we don't want Judy, for example, paying for the management of the Surfers Walk landscaping contract. So all of those costs that are associated with that neighborhood get pushed back on to that neighborhood in additional supplemental fees.
I started talking in your slides.
Oh, that's okay. You were doing an excellent job. Let's take a look at some of the changes. Obviously, we're going to go from about 1,500 properties to 2,000 properties. We're going to redo the covenants. I don't think if you read through the unified covenants, you're going to see any big differences. The design guidelines are also going to be unified next year. We have a team that's starting to work those already. There's going to be some, we're going to lose the revenue. Right now we're charging Stage 2 $46,000 a year to manage their architectural review committee. And that's going to go away. But then we get their fees back also. So in Stage 1, the neighborhoods will continue to self-manage, and either the Bald Head Association or CAMS will pick up managing the individual neighborhoods, Keeper's Landing, Surfers Walk, and all that will be paid for by those property owners. One big thing, the communication and advocacy part, which is what we do. It's in our articles of incorporation that we will communicate and we will provide advocacy for our membership. But right now, when we advocate for something, I mean, we don't say, yes, you can build oil wells off the coast of Bald Head Island, but you can only do oil spills on Stage 2. You can't do them on Stage 1. I mean, you can't do that, okay? When we advocate for something, whether it be a rate case with limited or something with the Corps of Engineers, et cetera, we by the nature of the island, we advocate for everybody. So we're going to allow them to help us pay for this effort. So next slide. Common areas, real quick to take a look at. In the yellow is what is currently Bald Head Association common areas. Next slide. What's outlined in the green is some of what we're going to be picking up, common areas after the merger.
And
there's a map back there on the wall that shows all of it.
That shows this much better, the map, the large map, and these things will also be on the website.
Right. Next slide. Okay, dues and financials. And you get this.
So as we started this whole process, really there were a couple of mandates that we started with in the Bald Head Association, and I think Stage II believes that will be the case as well. And the first one was that if we were able to merge these two organizations together, there couldn't be a resulting dues increase. It just didn't make any sense for us to bring the two organizations together and, for example, in Stage I, your dues go up $50 a year by bringing them in. So that was really something we really focused on, trying to make sure that was the case. And then the second one is looking at, as Joe said, those additional supplemental services that are either amenities that are specific to certain neighborhoods, to make sure that those property owners in those specific neighborhoods pay for their own amenities, and that those are not the maintenance, the reserves, and the management of those amenities are not paid for by another property owner in another part of the island. So really those two fundamental pieces were what we looked at. So what we, and I'll ask you as we're talking through the financials, please don't focus on the exact numbers. What we think we've come up with is a process, is a methodology, because as we sit here in 2016, the vote is in 17, and the merger takes effect in 18. Clearly, something's going to happen between now and then. You know, there will be things that are unaccounted for where the numbers may be higher or lower. We just don't know, but just take care to notice the process. So, but what I will tell you, what the board has committed is for 2017 and 2018, the basic dues for Bald Head Association will remain at $115 for a lot and $345 for a home. So for the next 2 years, that will be the number. And as Judy mentioned earlier, what we have as a working model at this point is for CAMS or another third-party association to manage Keeper's Landing, Surfman's Walk, and Sumner's Crescent. Those are really 3 service areas that have a great deal of maintenance costs, of maintenance of activity. And I think, you know, as we talk through this, that those 3 neighborhoods in particular are something that we're going to need to figure out how to bring into this. So the rest of the neighborhoods, the rest of those covenants that Judy talked about are ones that we believe we can manage in-house. Those 3 for now at least will continue to stay with a third-party management company. So for those of you who like numbers, this is a pretty good slide for you. For those of you who don't, just look at the number at the bottom. What the first after what we did, we looked at this as again a picture of if we bring them in, what does it come out to 0? You know, is the balance, is the budget balance? And so, you know, the first half we looked at is we looked at the revenue minus what we would lose with the contract that we have with Stage II, and then the income that we have coming in, and what are our expected expenses. So the Stage II lots, there are 240 lots in Stage II, and there are 214 homes that will bring in improved assessment. Those are minus the 67 homes that are Forest Bluff Killer Gray Ridge, because those property owners are in both Stage I and Stage II. So that money will go away. We looked at the review fees for architectural review. Stage II's fees are higher than Bald Head Association. So what we did is we took the number of submissions and applied our fee schedule to that to try to get some idea of what those ARC review fees will be. Again, that's using 2015 reviews. Clearly, there's more construction, there's more activity, so those numbers are going to change, you know, unless something drastic happens. So we applied that number. The supplemental dues collected from neighborhoods. As Joe mentioned, all of those amenities that happen in Keeper's Landing and Serpent's Walk, those numbers, the management of those amenities, the reserves that are required for them, and the management of those contracts is all collected in a total, at least for now, is $27,691. So that money will come in, and it will come in specifically from those property owners. Those will not be applied to anyone else. We'll also lose that $46,000 that Joe mentioned with the contract that we have with Stage 2, which brings us roughly at $108,000 of income coming in. Now, looking at, again, these are 2016 budget numbers for Stage 2. There is master common area that they had budgeted in 2016 of $22,000 of those expenses. That number may or may not change. It depends on what the BHA board decides to do with those common areas. The reserves for those master assets, again, in 2016, the amount that had been reserved was $21,000. That's probably a number that will remain pretty close to that amount. The insurance and legal are numbers that, with the help of Stage 1, we looked at where their costs are, where our costs are. Both of those are areas where there will be some reduction of expenses. Right now, both organizations are paying directors and officers insurance. Both organizations are paying liability insurance. So that will go away. Those amounts will be combined. And again, both of us are paying legal costs, so there will be some savings there. We will, as you all know, we do mail the island report every month. Our property owners like to have that, so we do continue to provide that. Bringing in another several hundred properties, that's a hard cost of about $13 grand. Some other expenses, and those neighborhood expenses that I talked about earlier, the $27 grand for the supplemental expenses, brings us to roughly 105. So again, don't look at the specific numbers. We think what we've been able to do is figure out a process of revenue coming in, understanding what revenue needs to go out as a result of bringing them in, and that number at the end may go up or down depending on what happens over the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as I said, there is a draft right now of the Unified Covenant. Prior to, by the time that we send out the packet for voting, there will be a finalized version of the Unified Covenant. Right now, we're getting a lot of good questions and a lot of people reading them, and so we're almost there as far as formalizing them, but there's still some tweaking that will be done. In summary, also, as we said, Flores Bluff and Tilbury Ridge will no longer be coming into the merger. It will be as if they were only in Stage 1, not in both Stage 1 and Stage 2. And within the covenant, all of the properties in Stage 1, Bulkhead Island Association, are listed. If you look at the covenant, this is Exhibit A, and the original Stage 2 properties are listed separately as Exhibit B, which makes it easier for us to manage the covenants that only deal with a certain piece of those. The architectural review, I know, is a concern to many people. By November 1st, and it actually has been appointed already, the committee was appointed in order to begin to review and bring these covenants, find a set of unified covenants. But if merger is approved, then by August 1st of next year, there will be a draft of the unified design guidelines circulated. There will be hearings on them, so input. And my guess is there will be a lot of input way before August 1st. As we go through the process, In the past, when we go through these processes, we have meetings with the builders, with the architects, looking to get their input as we move to this, and I'm sure this will happen very early next year, so that we have some experts. Another concern is the realtors, so we expect to be getting input from all of those as we work to get some unified design guidelines. There's a 3-member committee, and there's somebody sitting here that knows that it's not possible to write design guidelines with more than 3 people. That's very rural. There's a representative from Bald Head Island Association, one from Stage II, and one from Limited. They will be working with Karen, who's already in her mind got a list of differences, I know, and so that will happen. Once that happens, there will be one ARC committee, and they will be responsible for all reviews. There will not be a committee that does Stage 1, old Stage 1. There will not be a committee that does old Stage 2. There will be one committee. Now, they may be subdivided in order to be able to meet more than once a month, but there will just be the one committee. Okay, where are we now? You can see the beginning of this timeline. We're here today starting to get feedback, questions about merger. We will have the plan of merger ready to be signed by November 4th. And this is the overall, which you saw if you looked at that, that's available, and that's still in the process of a few tweaks. So that will be happening. The packets will be mailed out to you in mid-December for the annual meeting, in which case you will have these documents. The proxies are always due before the annual meeting, which will be the 28th. That Saturday, the 28th, is the annual meeting. And then over the course of the next year, there'll be the work that we said. If merger is approved, then we will work to get the United Design Guidelines. And merger will be effective by January 1st of 2018. So that gives us a whole year to move into this in a reasonable manner. Okay, now we're ready for questions, and we're going to ask, just because we're recording this, that if you have questions, that you ask them from the microphone at the podium, so that it can be recorded for people listening at home that are called in, and also for people that want to look at this at a later date.
Thank you to all the people that have been working on this year. It's something that I think a vast majority of people on the island have been hoping for a long, long time. So we appreciate all of the efforts that you guys have been going through to finally get to where we want to go. It seems like we're having an advocacy group that has the entire island associated with it versus half the island is just a great benefit for the island. And it seems like wherever we can find ways to eliminate duplication, like reduce legal fees and reduce administration for all of us, that is also a tremendous influence. So thank you for doing those things. My question was, is approval based on a majority of each of the two associations, or is it a plurality, or what is the exact 50% or more that vote to approve? Is it 100%? What's the approval process?
It's 2/3 of, for Stage 1, it's 2/3 of the membership.
2/3 for Stage 1. For Stage 2.
Not the membership.
It's 2/3 of those voting by proxy or in person at the meeting.
2/3 of the votes, not 2/3 of the membership.
Right.
Right, 2/3 of the vote. And you know, for stage 2,
I think it's pretty close.
Those are primarily driven by North Carolina statutes about merging of nonprofits. But it's a lawyer thing. I don't understand, but it's in there.
thank you. Where does the Harbor Association and Middle Island fall into the whole conversation? Right now, at least my understanding is I don't know if you handle any of that harbor, but we run into things with the association with the Middle Island.
The Middle Island has its own association, so they are not part of this.
We do pick up. I know at least
We do the architecture review. We have a contract with them where we do the architecture review. We've also been in the process of getting a contract for the harbor to do their architecture review. Right now, the harbor is one of the things that's come out as something that still needs to be talked about as far as the merger. I mean, we're taking a look at it now, and so it's sort of up in the air right now. But it's being worked on, so we'll let you know. There's going to be more information coming out on a continual basis as we move forward and get more. And so we'll let you know when that comes out, and we'll keep you informed as those things happen. Did I get that right about the harbor hearing?
Yes. And the Middle Island is, we do have a contract with them to provide all of their ARC services. But they do have a separate committee that Karen works with as well. So those reviews go through both committees. Karen, would you turn that microphone on, please, at the top? Thank you.
Are there any more questions?
Thank for my team for all the work that you guys have done too. My question is really simple. It has to do with the ongoing governance of the organization. At the point of merger, are you basically starting fresh with a new vote, new terms, et cetera, or overlapping terms? Talk a little bit about the governance going forward after the merger.
The Bald Head Association board that is in place will continue once Stage 2 merges into Bald Head Association and their members become us. Then everyone will be eligible to be on the board, whether they were used to be in Stage 1 or used to be in Stage 2. And essentially, the pool of potential nominees to the board just expands at that point. We're not going to do anything specific like give 2 seats on the board to the people that used to be in Stage 2 or anything. It's just that once the merger happens, everybody is eligible to be on the board.
Can I add to that, Joe, too? And we use the word merger, so we all understand what we're talking about. But remember, Judy said at the beginning that Stage 2 will fold into the Bald Head Association. So our governance as it exists today will continue on. So we'll have the same committees. And Stage 2 as a legal entity will just cease to exist.
A couple of questions, mainly which deal with finances, but the first one has to do with the vote. When the vote is taken, is this going to be one vote per property owner, or can it be weighted in some way for improved versus unimproved lots?
Every property gets one vote. So if you have one property that has 4 families that own it, every property gets one vote equally. I'm sorry, let me be clear, Richard, for stage 1. In stage 2, the developer has 3 votes for every 1 vote that the other property owners have.
Stage 2 vote is going to be based on whether it's improved or not.
Not whether it's improved or improved on the developer. They have 2 classes of membership. So the developer gets 3 votes for every property that Limited owns, and every other property owner gets 1 vote. In Bald Head Association, we have 1 class of membership, so everybody's treated exactly the same, whether you have a home or a lot.
And you would enlighten us as to why the Limited properties have 3 times the weight of the other properties in the stage 2 vote?
Yeah.
They work together.
Yeah, and that doesn't have anything to do with us, Richard. That's something that they've got and they're working through. So it's been that way since they started in '95.
And when merger takes place, that will go away.
Right.
Yeah.
It will. When it goes away, they will again fold into our culture, and so Limited will have 1 vote for every property.
And they've already agreed.
Stage 1, currently, what is the annual dues for an improved property?
$345.
In stage 2, what is the current annual dues for an improved property, excluding any add-ons for a specific neighborhood?
For 16, my understanding a home was about $615, and an unapproved property, which is a lot, was about $229.
What was the first number?
$615.
$615. So those people, if in a merged association, would go from $615 down to $345, based on the current numbers.
Correct.
Okay. Now they have, over the years, determined that they need $615 per improved property to run their business. Are we going to be subsidizing them to make up for the difference that they're now not going to be paying? Granted, you're saying we're all going to pay the same dues, but it seems like you're going to get ratcheted up from stage 1 dues and to compensate for the fact that they're coming down from stage 2.
Well, and I'll tell you, all of the property owners in stage 2, and Joe, you can probably answer the rest of the question, but all of the property owners in stage 2 will have some sort of supplemental fee, because even if CAMS is not managing them, there are still secondary covenants that have to be managed that Bald Head Association will be taking care of. So there will be a supplemental fee. So it won't be $345 and $115. It'll be something slightly higher. Management.
You've got those 3 major subdivisions that are going to be responsible for their own covenants. How many other local groups are we dealing with here?
I want to say there are 8 or 9. There's, Palm Court, Cedar Court, there's Loggerhead, there's Braemar, there's Palmetto Cove. There are a number of neighborhoods. They're not areas where they will have their own sub-association like the other 3 would. They're mainly streets. But each one of those streets has its own set of covenants. And in Cape Fear Station, for example, all of there are, Karen, help me out, I don't know how many, 14 something. And there are 129 properties that are within the Cape Fear Station area. They all have their own covenants. So there will be a fee for managing that, because that's not what, it's not what Bald Head Association has typically done.
Let's just say Cedar Court, Palm Court right now.
Okay.
Are they paying something supplemental to the base dues to cover whatever their requirements are?
They are. And
how will that be factored into the joint organization?
They will continue to pay. For example, Cedar Court pays, I want to say, $27 a month a year in addition to their base fees. They will pay that, whatever that amount is, that will cover those amenities, which is insurance and I believe the sign are the only 2 things on that street. they'll continue to pay that amount, which will go into reserve, but then they'll also pay an amount, which is a management fee for Bald Head Association to have to manage those secondary covenants.
The spreadsheet that you had there showing income and expenses for the merged association, this is the just dealing with what would be gained and spent for stage 2. In the expense portion of that, I didn't see any number there for staff expenses to manage all of these.
That was included. That was included in the cost for the individual.
It wasn't a separate line item.
No.
Okay. It would have been nice to be able to have a copy of that prior to it showing up on the screen in this field of night.
Sure. And I'll put that on the website.
All right. Okay, that's about all. Thanks.
Are there any issues? No? Thank you for being together. I thought I knew the answer to this question, but now I'm a little confused. We live in the village, and I believe that our covenants will not be affected by this, but then what about things like architectural review? Changes have to be made? No, there will be no changes. My name is Jeanette Cox, and I was on the long-range planning committee in 2007 to 2012 when we looked at merger and all of the things that happened. And at that time, our bottom line was, and we sound really powerful, not that I know all the things, but what's in the football association. And at that time, we decided there was no merit. And a lot of it had to do with the timing, the turnover of stage 2 to the property owners buying and participation in management of stage 2. Subsequently, after that transition from the developer to the property owners association, at that moment, there was a request to merge and also for the same reason we had previously, we chose not. It was not the right time to do it. There were too many unknowns. I really would like to commend Trish Bernard for taking your station apart, for the village, getting rid of many of the road issues that are things that all the association has no business interest in being in. Over the course of the last year, my position on merger has changed from what's in it for us to what's in it for the island. Many of the issues have been addressed and resolved. All of them have now, with this last year going through all the covenants and working together. And I am 100% in support of merging the two organizations. We have had, over the last, let's say, 2 years, many external issues, primarily that require advocacy on behalf of the entire community, for which the Bald Head Association has stepped up and has been the only organization that's been in the position to step up on behalf of the whole island. We've had several issues occur last year when I was president, where we had to say, and rightfully so, for instance, profiling that was a good priority to Bald Head Association because of our commentary at our investment fund, and excluding stage 2. It seems, though, that as the year progressed, there were more and more situations where we were being divisive rather than being collaborative with stage 2. And for that reason, I firmly believe that merger is in the best interest of society, the best interest of our property owners. I believe that the association does a fabulous job representing the non-voting property owners on this island. And I think it's important that we speak with one voice as property owners, because not all of us get to vote for our village council. And I would love for all of that to always be collaborative, but it isn't always so. And I think it's really important, especially from a communications perspective, to have that one voice and to know that we can go to one place. That said, I congratulate you all. I know how much work went into all of this, and it is fabulous. I have a lunch. And my butt is, as you may know,
over the last 17 years, there's been an issue with whether the Bulkhead Island Club is a member of the Bulkhead Association. And it appears that in these documents, that issue has been addressed at some point. My personal opinion about this is I don't really care in which direction the solution falls, other than it is solved and resolved amicably for the benefit of our property owners and the club members. But I did notice significant language in Section 8 regarding the common area and the club and license fees and things like that. Language that had not been used previously. I noticed that in Article 7 of the design guidelines that it doesn't apply to the golf course. That was deleted. The use guidelines did not apply to the club, and so I would love to, we're going to be voting on this as part of the merger, and I feel that it's in everybody's best interest to understand what the resolution is of the club relationship that is included in the code. Thank you.
As you know, because of certain fee changes, when the developer turned over the club to membership and everything else, the requirement that they fall up under our architecture review was deleted from their deed. And that was the only tie between those. Our feeling going forward, we continued with that. And people who are members of the associations typically are also members of the club. And so there is the avenue for disagreements with the club's direction to be voiced. Does that answer the question?
Mostly, I guess part of it too is the process. In my document, I was able to see the process specifically. When I did the link, I didn't have to list. So, for instance, whether the club properties were included under Stage 1 or not.
It's what is currently in our Section A.
So they're not.
Is the same.
So they are not.
They are not.
So do we have people who be sensible? Is there now a formal agreement that provides from which this Section 8 language is withdrawn? In terms of dues, expenses, or anything like that, or what the relationship is?
They're not in Section 8. They were not in Section 8. And their requirement to get our ARC approval was deleted from their deed. So they're not a member of the club. Oh, they're not a member of the association legally.
Yes, what we're going to be doing after you brought this up is that next week we're going to be taking a closer look at where some of this language came from, and hopefully we can get it all in the code. But thank you. That's all.
Good morning. I'm Auntie Mary. I'm also with Chip from the Board Association who started this merger process. And I also would like to commend the board for how far you all have come on this. My only question is, what is the legal situation of Stage 2 right now? Do they have any current legal obligations outstanding? And if they do, would those legal obligations come over to the merged association, and would we take on those obligations?
I would tell you, Rhonda, we are sort of having in a parallel path right now. We are still in the middle of the due diligence process. So what Judy wanted to do was to keep the members informed of exactly where we are, what we're thinking, what direction we're thinking of going. At the same time, we're also continuing to get, I just got another 15 emails from them just yesterday with a lot of information. As far as we can tell, they don't have any legal obligations past 2017. The only thing that I can see thus far is they leased a space down at Merchants Row, and that I have it on my list of things to double check to see when that lease ends. Other than that, we have we have found nothing else that is an obligation. No debt, no anything like that.
Okay, yeah, something that reminded me when I was on the board. They had a lot of different reserves set up. If I remember correctly, looking at their financial statements, even on merger back, and I can't remember what year. Do they still have all those reserves set up? And if they do, have those reserves been met? Have they fulfilled all of their reserve obligations on the different properties, or are they still lacking in their reserves?
The latter, which is part of the reason why we have intending to use 2017. One of the main issues that still is outstanding is Palmetto Cove, and you'll recall that those streets were not up to standard and the village did not want to accept them. So they've put a significant amount of money into those reserves. They'll be paving them. They fixed the bridge there. They've paid for all of that. That should be paid for, and the last payment should be made in 2017, which Stage 2 will then pay for. Those roads are supposed to be dedicated at that point to the village. And as far as I know, that is the major, the primary issue that we saw, that where the reserves were not there.
Other than that, obligations would come over to us in the merged organization.
No, those streets would be turned over to the village and they would be public roads.
Is that in the covenant? I don't remember seeing that in the United Covenant, or is that going to be in the merged document? That will not come over to us as an obligation if the roads are not turned over by 12/31/2017.
It is not in the covenant, but it is certainly something that we could talk to them about adding to the merger agreement. I mean, from everything I've seen, I think the paving is supposed to happen in the next few weeks. So I have not seen their 2017 budget yet, but Tricia did tell me 2 weeks ago that they had planned to have that last payment in their budget. So, but that's a good point.
Thank you too.
I'm Bob Porter, otherwise known as Mr. Judy Porter. I have no inside information because, frankly, we've been attending meetings for the last year or so in this regard. There is I have been able to find out by going to the internet, all of these slides and this sort of thing. I come to some conclusions, and I would like the board to tell me if my conclusions that I've drawn are incorrect. The first conclusion is this wasn't a wild hair where somebody suddenly some morning decided, gee, let's merge. It was, in fact, required of us to go through this process in our companies. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. The second is that there were a great many differences between Stage 2 and Stage 1 as to how the governance was done. In Stage 2, the Central Stage 2 Association took care of a lot of things that here in Stage 1 were done by individual associations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The next thing that I determined was the model that has come up for this appears to be a model that would very much look like exactly what we have here in Stage 1 now. For instance, if you're a member of Timber Creek, you pay Stage 1 just like everybody else, and you pay dues to Timber Creek. And the whole point to this complicated financial scheme is that when all the dust is settled, that's exactly how it will be in the combined thing. If you're a member of Surfers Walk, you'll pay BHA dues, and you'll pay supplemental dues or supplemental charges for those extra things that you have to get because it's in your covenants that somebody has to rake your lawn or
have in their covenants, they are allowed to form their own neighborhood homeowners association, exactly like
in which case, for the amount that they took over, there would be no supplemental dues to the association.
That's correct. If they stood up a Serpent's Walk homeowners association, then all those dues, all that maintenance, everything else would go to them, just like Lighthouse Landing, just like Timber Creek, just like the Villas, Forest Bluff, everything.
Fine. Now, my final issue is very parallel to what Richard Becerra is referring to. As I read through the information available to me, the immediate financial benefits to the merger would almost totally apply to Stage 2, not Stage 1. We would end up in exactly the position we're in now, and most of the benefits, with one exception, and that would be that the final payment, supplemental payment for Battery 4 would now be shared by the people in Stage 2 as well as Stage 1.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
But that the benefits to the Bulkhead Association, Stage 1, will be deferred for a year or two until all the dust is settled and all the inequities or all the strangenesses.
That's a word. That's a word.
Well, let's go with the general idea of what that word means. But all of these strange things to us that are in Stage 2 are ironed out. After that, we would start to enjoy the fact that we would have only one set of legal fees and all that kind of stuff, and we would be advocates for the entire island.
Correct. There would be not only a larger base of people to nominate for the board, for example, you would also have a larger financial base, which would accrue to the Bulkhead Association over time.
Thank you very much. Since my name was taken in vain, I get a second bite of the apple. Specifically, what I want to ask questions about is the relationship between the association and the club. Am I correct in my assumption that the club is now considered not to be affiliated or under the rules of the association whatsoever?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it was somehow during the dark of night that was their obligation to go through the design guidelines was taken out of their deed during
Some negotiations that we were not
aware of.
It was when they had their universal agreement
Right.
in March of 2015.
I have a selfish interest in this because where our house is situated happens to be right across the road from where the maintenance area is for the club currently, which is again being expanded, which affects the value of the house. And a couple of years back, there was thought of the club building a dormitory type structure over there as well to accommodate the workers for the club. Given what you're telling me now, could they just go ahead and do this without any input or oversight from the association or the village?
I think that they have to have oversight from the village, depending on how that land is owned. But we don't have, so I think you have to go to the club board meeting if you hear that happening and speak up there.
I'm trying to remember the rationale behind how they assumed they could just build a structure over there. And it had something to do with it was their property. And
I don't remember exactly, Richard.
but there is no oversight capability anymore from the association whatsoever.
No.
Only through club membership and check those bylaws and those do not change.
expressed in the bylaws.
It's a matter of who gets to vote on what. With what is the key factor. In those documents.
Okay, I think we're going to lose our audience. Is there anything, other questions for us about the merger? Okay, then I'd like to thank you all for coming and for your questions and for your concerns. And hopefully, if you're in favor of this merger, you will talk to your friends and neighbors and see if we can get this done. Thank you very much.